I've known Joe Lample for a few years now through the Association for Garden Communicators. He is the amiable host of the PBS gardening program called Growing a Greener World. I'd been following him on Facebook and watching the GGW episodes each season. Unbeknownst to me, he'd been following me on Facebook, reading my blog, and watching some of my bird videos. In March of last year, he emailed me to ask if I'd be willing to have our garden featured on Growing a Greener World. It was both an exciting and daunting prospect. My husband Bill and I agreed to do it, then dove into making our garden look as good as we possibly could. Joe and his cameraman Carl arrived in early August for 2 days of filming. Here's a short video I took right before they got to our place. Well, folks, it's the calm before the storm. In a few minutes, Joe Lample, who's the host of Growing a Greener World, and his cameraman Carl are coming to film an episode in my garden. I can't believe it. I'm a little nervous and I'm hoping everything will go well. I'll tell you what, I have primped this garden like you would not believe. I have pruned, I have deadheaded, I have trimmed, I have weeded. I think it's as good as it's going to look. So I will let you know how things go. Stay tuned. Let me just start by saying that Joe and Carl are the nicest guys. They are based in Atlanta. Both of them are true professionals who love what they do. They work hard to share stories of people around the country who choose to live and garden sustainably. You wouldn't believe all of the camera equipment they needed to bring along. It took Carl about 2 hours to completely set up the main camera, which gave us time to get acquainted with them. After that, Joe and Carl wandered through our back garden looking for the perfect place to conduct the initial interview. As you can see, they checked all the angles. They finally settled on a nice spot with blooming daylilies and bee balm behind me. We had talked with Joe on the phone 2 weeks beforehand, so I had a rough idea of what he wanted to ask me, but it still was a little nerve-wracking. After all, I'm used to interviewing other people, not the other way around. After checking to make sure the color was reading correctly on the camera, we went through the interview. The tough thing for Joe and Carl was that their flight from Atlanta had been delayed, so they arrived in Spokane at about 4 a.m. their time, so they were exhausted when we started filming that morning. Poor guys. After the interview, which took a long time because we kept having to stop every time a plane flew overhead or a train blew its whistle, they had me do different types of gardening activities, such as pruning our tomato vines, harvesting kale, onions, or even pole beans. The funny thing was that I had done so much tidying in the garden before they arrived, there really wasn't that much for me to do. But that's okay. By the way, Joe really liked our pole bean arbor. Carl used a camera with a special harness so he could freely move around the garden. It was hot though. Joe and I did what they call the walk and talk segment next, where we wandered through the garden talking about various aspects of gardening in the inland Northwest or what we've done to attract birds to the garden. By the end of the first day, we were tired, but we were hanging in there. Bill got involved in many ways. First of all, he took a lot of these photos to help chronicle our experience. He held light reflectors when needed, and even an umbrella to keep Carl cooler. He even was filmed unloading a bale of straw from his Kubota tractor at one point, since Kubota is one of their sponsors. At the end of the second day of filming, we were all exhausted. You can see that we look pretty happy, but check out all of our tired eyes. After they left, Bill and I collapsed and took it easy for a few days. Earlier this spring, the new season of Growing a Greener World began. It's been a treat watching the first few episodes so far, although I was surprised to discover that I'm part of the intro for each episode. So if you see a lady next to some artichoke plants with the sun behind her, well, that's me. Our episode, which is called In Susan's Garden, is tentatively scheduled to air on June 17th on the Create channel, which is 7.3 in this area. If you aren't able to locate it, you can always watch it on Joe's website, growingagreenerworld.com. I hope you've enjoyed this little behind-the-scenes look at our experience. It was a lot of fun and a lot of work, but we're glad we did it.